welcome to IP Study Video Lectures. Today we will discuss the 13th chapter of Grade 6 English Grammar and we will dive into the world of verbs. As we all know, verbs are the action words. In today's class, we will discuss particularly about transitive and intransitive verbs. Transitive verbs are those verbs which require an object to complete its meaning in a sentence. Whereas intransitive verbs are those verbs which do not require an object to complete its meaning in a sentence. Before the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify transitive and intransitive verbs in sentences, differentiate between transitive and intransitive verbs, assess incomplete verbs and the need for a complement to complete their meaning. Before we discuss further, let us study this small example. The boy is crying. The boy is crying because his mother scolded him. Now, both of these sentences are complete and they are making a complete sense. In the first sentence, we have only mentioned about the action and we did not require an object. So, this is an example of intransitive verb. Whereas in the second sentence, we stated the reason why the boy is crying. The boy is crying because his mother scolded him. So the part which is because his mother scolded him, this is an object. So in the second sentence, the verb required an object to complete its meaning. This is an example of transitive verb. Let us study these two sentences. The child broke the glass. I cried bitterly. Now, in the first sentence, the child broke the glass. That means we have the object in this sentence. In the second sentence, I cried bitterly. In this sentence, we do not have an object. In the first sentence, the action expressed by the verb broke passes over from the subject, the child, to the object glass. The sentence will not make complete sense without the object. In the second sentence, the action stops with the subject. The verb in itself makes the complete sense, like I cried bitterly. There can be no sentences without verbs. Why? Because a verb tells us what a person or thing does, what is done to a person, what a person or thing is. So verbs are the action words which are required, which are essential to complete the meaning of the sentence. What a person or thing does. For example, a plumber repairs pipes. So this is an action done by a plumber. What is done to a person? The boy was scolded by his father. What a person or thing is. The peacock is a beautiful bird. So, there can be no sentence without a verb. We require whether a transitive verb or an intransitive verb to complete the sentence. Now, let us study about the kinds of verbs. Transitive verbs and intransitive verbs. A verb which requires an object to complete its sense is called a transitive verb. A verb which does not require an object to complete its sense is called an intransitive verb. Most transitive verbs take a single object, but transitive verbs like give, ask, promise, tell, they take two objects after them. One of these objects is a thing and the other is a person. For example, I gave Rohan an ice cream. So, the verbs like give, ask, promise, tell, they take two objects. One is a person and the other is a thing. For example, I gave. So, the verb I gave required two objects, Rohan and ice cream. So, these are transitive verbs. Here, the thing ice cream is called a direct object and Mohan, the boy, is called an indirect object. Indirect object usually comes before the direct object. That means what was given to Rohan? An ice cream was given to Rohan. So the direct object is an ice cream. I gave ice cream to whom? To Rohan. So Rohan is an indirect object. Often indirect object comes before the direct object in the sentence. So in the above sentence, the doer is I, the direct object is ice cream, and the indirect object is Rohan. Using a preposition, such sentences can be rewritten without changing the meaning. For example, I gave an ice cream to Rohan. Here, the direct object comes before the indirect object, and the indirect object becomes the object of a preposition to. That means indirect object Rohan was accompanied with to. The best way to identify the direct object of a verb is to ask the question whom or what. For example, what was given? An ice cream was given. This is a direct object. So to identify a direct object, ask a question whom or what after the verb. So I gave, what did you give? An ice cream, right? We can identify the indirect object by asking to, for, from, whom, what after the verb. So, what did you give? I gave an ice cream. To whom? To Rohan. So, asking a question after a verb, when you ask a question whom or what, after that you can identify the indirect object by asking to, for, from, whom, what after the verb. Let's take a look at the following group of words. Raghav is, the children are, the child cried. The highlighted words is are, cried. They are intransitive verbs. That means these verbs do not require an object. But these group of words, do you think they make a complete sense? Let's study. The highlighted words are intransitive verbs that do not require any object. But at the same time, they do need some other word or phrase to make complete sense. So although these verbs are intransitive, is, are, cried, they do not need an object, but they still need some other word or a phrase to complete its sense. Verbs in which a word or a phrase is needed to make complete sense are called verbs of incomplete predication or incomplete verbs. That means they do need a predicate. They are incomplete. The word or phrase so added is called the complement of the verb. That means we need to add a word which will be called a complement of the verb to complete its meaning in order to complete the predicate. Now let's read these group of words again with a complement in the sentence. For example, Raghav is a doctor. So here we have added a doctor, which is a complement. The children are playing. So we have added the verb here. The highlighted words are called complements. So incomplete sentences or sentences with intransitive verbs, which although do not require an object, but they do need a word or a phrase, and that word or a phrase in the sentence which complete its meaning is called a complement. So this was all about transitive and intransitive verbs. Before we end this lesson, let us discuss or let us recap these few points. A transitive verb is a verb which requires an object to complete sense. An intransitive verb is a verb which requires no object to complete its sense. Incomplete verbs are verbs that need a word or a phrase to make complete sense. The complement of the verb is the word or phrase added to make complete sense. So this was all about verbs. Thank you so much for staying with us. Keep revising your verbs and keep discussing with your friends about transitive and intransitive verbs. See you again in our next lecture video.